All right, we dancing, beautiful people.
Welcome back to another episode of the Winner Circle, everybody. I'm super stoked for our guest this week. I actually requested that Derek reach out to her because I enjoyed listening to the podcast so much, and I'm super excited because I know this is going to be a magical conversation. The goal that we have with this podcast is to bring you guys people who are winning in the real world. And what winning looks like is following your heart, listening to that call that you may hear to do what you love to do, even though it might be more difficult than the traditional career path or life that we are kind of taught is necessary to survive. I truly believe that we all have the capability of following our dreams and producing what we can, providing what we can for the people around us, and not so much so we have to do these jobs that we just have to get through in order to survive. So I'm super stoked for this podcast and this conversation. Derek, if you would please take it away.
Absolutely. So on this episode of Welcome to the Winner Circle, we'll be interviewing author, speaker, coach, and host of the Thought Room podcast, where she interviews world-renowned thought leaders, including musicians, mathematicians, life coaches, psychonauts, PhDs, professional athletes, on and on and on. She's also the CEO of Lunar Wild, a women's empowerment brand dedicated to the sacred alchemy of womanhood, with a focus on supporting and celebrating young women as they approach the onset of their first menstruation. Ladies and gentlemen, Hallie Rose, welcome to the Winner Circle.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Beautiful. And we just jump right into it. Our first question is a question I believe everyone listening need to bring awareness to if they do not know this answer, but there's no better time to start anything than right here, right now. So Hallie Rose, what is your mission here on this reality plane?
Oh, good question. I think there's a couple layers to it, but first and foremost, I desire to live a life that is joyful. I really believe that we came here to experience a joyful life, and that doesn't mean a life free of suffering, but I think the ultimate goal is that we were born to shine brightly, and I think that joy is definitely part of my personal goal. And then on a collective level, and this is connected to the joy, is this sense of love and spreading love throughout every word and action. And it's obviously easier said than done. But that is my highest standard that I try to uphold, and I fall down a lot. But at the end of this lifetime, I'd like to be able to say that I brought and left more joy and more beauty in the world than there was before I came.
I love that so much. You said two things that I kind of wanted to touch on because they related a bit. You said born to shine, and then this place of love. And we talk about the hero's journey and Joseph Campbell, and one of our favorite quotes is follow your bliss. And I truly believe that no matter what, if you are doing what makes you feel good, what makes you full of joy, you are going to be helping everybody around you because you are going to be vibrating at that state, at that frequency, which creates that ripple effect around you. So I think that's beautiful. And just being that example, and that creates that exact mission for the collective as well, you know?
Absolutely.
So Hallie, what is love? What does that mean to you?
Love is, well, at this point in my life, I understand it as a frequency. So it's a vibration. Everything is vibration. You know, this table that I'm sitting at is vibrating particles that are vibrating very, very close together. I mean, the air is vibrating particles that are further apart. We have, we have the five senses that we know of, and our eyes are sensing, our nose can smell things, and we can hear things. But I think that we have more than five senses. And I think that at this point in human evolution, we are just learning about those extra senses. And so it can be a chaotic and confusing time as we're shifting from relying on these five senses that sense the physical world and things that we can only, like seeing is believing, that sort of thing. Now we're moving, I think, into this, at least this is my personal experience. I feel like I'm moving into this deep feeling space, this deeply intuitive space where sometimes I'm making decisions from a place that rationally that choice wouldn't make sense. But if I'm following the compass of my heart, that's what feels right. So love, love is super complex, and we're not just talking about like romantic love here. When I talk about love, I'm talking about capital L love in the sense of like source or God or being one with all that is, that sort of love. And it is perceived by me in this physical body as a sense of alignment. So love is a sense of rightness in that inner heart space, in that compass, whether it's the way that you respond in an interaction that you walk away feeling proud of, even if it was a difficult conversation, but you said something that was in alignment. That's love. That's source speaking to you through that extra sense. Or whether it is you being pulled toward your life's mission, what you came here to do. That's also a form of love, being of service. So, it's a giant topic, but to me, it is about fine-tuning this other sense, this love sense that is centered in my heart space, and trying to live life and make my decisions out of that space of vibratory resonance in that frequency.
Yes. And going back to what you had said earlier about kind of finding this place that we were born with, because we were born with nothing but caring about loving people and having a great time. And then we learn all of this fear and lack and limitation and everything. So I totally feel me and Derek have been going through all of this at the same time, I think, like just really turning inward and knowing that we have all of that love. We have all of the entire universe in every inch of our body, because we did come from the universe. We came from source. And so knowing that we don't need what's been taught to us as proof, as like scientific proof, the scientific method, that's so much for this physical plane. And when we start to peel back those layers of like believing that you need to have that to believe in something, that's something that it's been blowing my mind, because I was an engineer. I grew up super, super left brain, and it's just crazy to really tune in and feel like, do I feel that expansion in my heart for like a visceral or intuitive yes for something versus a visceral or intuitive no, even if the answer like feels like it doesn't make any logical sense, right? And it's crazy because we've been taught, you don't know everything, ask the experts, ask Google, whatever, and we literally know everything. We just have to tune into that. And I think the more that we can come back to that place of love, that when I meditate and I feel that, I feel my whole body like vibrating or tingling with that power. That's really what it is. It's that power. And the more we tune into that, I feel we can start fully trusting in ourselves again, because it's rewiring the patterns of not trusting ourselves anymore.
Completely. And what you said before about love, it reminds me of a quote from Marianne Williamson that I love so much. She says, "Love is what we were born with. Fear is what we have learned here." And then, of course, she has that famous speech that's in the movie Coach Carter, where she says our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate, it's that we are powerful beyond measure. So, what you said about we're not taught to trust that intuition. It's because, there's a lot of things out there that don't want us to all unleash the truth of how powerful we each are. Mm-hmm. And it's time now for us to get brave and to start stepping into that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So Hallie, you mentioned love and romantic love. And that's something that our friend Eric, who you were just out visiting for your birthday, happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
Just wrote a newsletter about that. And he spoke about this book, We, by Robert A. Johnson. But yeah, love and romantic love. I think love is just love. And I'll read this book and I'll figure out more. And I think the concept of romantic love is something that we've seen in movies like When Harry Met Sally and whatever romantic comedy there is. And even if you read Sex at Dawn by Chris Ryan, monogamous pairings, that is not the norm. This is what we've been taught. So let's get into that. What are your thoughts on that? What is the difference between love, capital L, and romantic love? And is there?
Yes and no. It all falls under the umbrella of love, but I think that the way we understand and conceptualize romantic love for the majority of people, it is siphoned off or cut off from the fullness of what that source love is. And not in every case, but in most cases, I find, at least when I'm working with clients and relationships is an area of passion for me, I find that people are really seeking that other half. Right? I want to find that other person that completes me. And here is where the idea of romantic love is kind of innately flawed. And we need to become whole within ourselves. It's not 1 and 1 makes 2. It's like we need to, how can I put this? If you are trying to seek somebody to feel a sense of completeness, you are chasing a pipe dream, and your whole life you will feel lonely and you will never figure out why. And that is because there is a part of yourself that needs to be brought home. And so the most expansive sort of love can happen romantically or in any other way when you have first kind of touched in with that source love and you see the innate connection of all things. So when you have reached that level of understanding with love, at least in my personal experience, it's made being in relationship and the tumultuousness that comes along with being in a relationship a lot easier, because you can just sort of witness the other person in their own journey with compassion and respect and love, but you don't need to attach to it. You don't need to get warped into it. It doesn't have to, it kind of happens naturally because relationships are our greatest teacher. But if you can really understand that it's not somebody else's job to make you happy, this will liberate you in so many ways on your journey of finding out really what true love is. I don't know if that answers your question, totally, but it's a big topic.
Oh yeah. I think Derek and I have been talking about this a lot, and this idea of the masculine and feminine energies, I was very uneducated on what those were. And not until I started doing this life coaching certification course did I start to be exposed to it. And I just realized how much of my whole life, not surprising because we live in a distorted masculine society. But like, I was so in my distorted masculine, I need to produce things to be loved. I need to produce results. I need to give. It's crazy that women are in that distorted masculine of giving too much. We got to provide for the family, take care of the family, blah, blah, blah. When that feminine is more of that receiving and learning how to be able to accept compliments or whatever it is. And I read this book that talked about, the true thing that we are all searching for in the external world, usually because we've not been taught what is actually desired, is that mating and that balance of the masculine and the feminine within us in their healthy forms compared to the distortions. And when you are able to be in that balance, you draw that perfect person for you to you who also is in that balance. And you know that you don't necessarily need them. You know, you are whole in your own being, but now this person will be able to complement you, and you can create so much more with this person, but you don't necessarily need them. It's that inner work, as always. Like, it is always starting from the self. What's going on internally is reflected in all of your relationships. So learning that you need to become whole for anything to feel close to whole is so crucial.
Totally. I was also reading something this morning and you reminded me of it. And, you know, we have this idea of the yin and yang and black and white and all the polarities that sort of run our universe. And a lot of times when we're talking about integrating both our feminine and our masculine, this can confuse people a little bit. So I think it's good to just unpack for anyone listening that doesn't know what we're talking about. If I'm a woman and I'm talking about integrating my masculine, I'm not like talking about becoming more boyish, you know what I mean? So we're talking about energies here. And so the masculine energy is one of action, right? It's about getting things done. It is that kind of hunter gatherer. It's going out, it's doing, it's very fiery, but it's also earth. Like the masculine can hold a container. The feminine is more water, it's creation, it's intuition. It's like you said, it's receiving. So both men and women, you know, regardless of what gender you even ascribe to or identify with, there's this idea of integrating all of these energies within ourselves. So I believe at looking at kind of canvassing what's been happening the last 50 or 100 years, you look at, say, like the feminist movement happening. So there was a time of, there's been thousands and thousands and thousands of years where the feminine was sort of suppressed and women themselves were sort of tokens. The father would, air quotes, give away his daughter to the man that she was going to marry. And it was almost like she was property at this point. And then we had, you know, women's suffrage, the whole women's feminism movement, and women were beginning to express. So like for women, what I read this morning was the throat chakra has been closed. And this is the power of what is sacred. This is the power of creation. This is the true power that a woman really has, that she has kept secret for thousands and thousands of years because it had to get shut down. And men, what I read this morning, it was saying that men are sort of, if women are stuck in the throat chakra, then men are stuck in this second chakra, the sexual center. So their energy doesn't really get to rise all the way up. And women don't either. We're stuck here. So our goal is to, you know, as women, learning how to express, and as men, you know, learning to integrate all of these upper chakras. That's where we're really going to get that connection most with source. So for men, it's been sort of this idea historically that you will go to war for your country, you will do what's right for your family, you will just get it done. You might have to do really hard things. You might have to kill people, and you're going to what are you going to have to do to survive a situation like that? You're going to have to shut down your feeling life and your empathy and your emotions. So for men, traditionally, it's not been seen as a strength for men to really be wide open emotionally and cry. I mean, they probably wouldn't have been able to really survive in the landscape that we've had. For women, traditionally also, so like a woman who spoke up, it was putting herself in danger. Now everything's shifting, and I mean, time itself feels like it's accelerating to me. But the work now is for our men to, doesn't mean they have to become feminine, like I was saying, but what they're learning is this emotional intelligence, this intuition, and they need to give themselves permission. And we as women need to hold the container for them to feel safe, to learn how to express their emotions for the first time, many of them. I can't tell you how many men have been around me and told me it was the first time they'd cried since they were a teenager, and they didn't know what it was about me, but for some reason they felt safe to cry. I want to teach more women how to be that for men, and I want to teach more men how to feel safe doing that. And for women, the challenge is, so I believe we went into this sort of space of what I maybe would call like the angry feminine. So like the angry feminist type is one for me that perhaps was liberated from this sort of oppression of the throat chakra and not speaking up. And then this anger or this fire came out in this almost overtly masculine way. So it's not about going to the other extreme now. It's about, as a woman, what is the expression of the divine feminine? Because I could be a woman, but I could express the masculine, which is that like kind of like, I might come across as like jarring to a lot of people. Like, oh my gosh, she's so intense. Like, what is that? And, oh, well, I'm not intense. I'm just being, I'm just being what men are. So like, that's still not an integration of it. Right. So there's a way for me as a woman, without being that angry feminist or without like forcing my beliefs down someone's throat, I can just walk into a room and I can hold that power with my beingness, with my vibration. So that's what I am. And I believe women right now during this time are working toward integrating, is becoming that vibration of the divine expression of power and the integration of our masculine and our feminine. And for men, again, it's this idea of allowing themselves to move into the feeling space, open up all these upper chakras, and their minds are just going to get totally blown when they allow themselves to open up their universe with all of the other stuff that's up here waiting for them.
Oh my gosh, so many good things that you just talked about. But I think it's important for people to become present to the idea that literally everything around us is just energy, right? I think you kind of touched on that earlier. And it's so much more, and we talk about this in my life coaching course, but it's so much more about just your way of being, your energy that opens something up for somebody else, more than your words, more than your actions, just the way that you are. That's the energy that they are feeling. And then it will create this kind of ripple effect that allows people to step into that. And it's so crazy because I have been talking with my friend who kind of channels and everything. And she was talking to me about how she discovered that same thing about the throat chakra. And I have a little bit of difficulty becoming present to what of my chakras are blocked. Like it's hard for me to feel like the lower three, but I always feel a little bit of like a contraction in my throat. And it's insane how, we are all one. We all came from the same place. So it makes so much sense how like we as this physical manifestation of the feminine feel the suppression of all that came before us. And it's really interesting because I do feel the more that I express myself in my truth, the more that opens up, but it's still like very there every day. The more I like focus on it, then I'm like, whoa, wow. It's something that I just am used to now, I feel like. But yeah, I think the more that we can become aware of what's going on in our own bodies, the more that we can address like our blockages. Like, as you said, many men are blocked down there where they're not even very aware of what's going on up here. And this is our path, our runway to source, right? So very, very interesting stuff. And again, against the grain of what we were taught in school of what's going on here. But it was crazy. I watched this heart math video the other day, just on heart coherence and everything. And it talked about how our hearts are sending electrical signals to our body, like all over the place. And it's this current that's creating this electromagnetic field around our body 3 feet in every direction. And that's insane. And we don't feel like that is, some of us who are more in tune with energy and like if I focus on it when I'm meditating, I can feel my energy out there. But because it's been so long of thinking that we are confined to our physical form, again, it's like that rewiring or peeling off of those old beliefs that I took on as truth, and really getting down to the fact that me and Derek were talking about, like there's 12 chakras, right? There's like outside of our bodies too, and that's just so hard to even conceptualize because of what we've learned. Crazy.
Yeah, completely. And what you were just sharing about the throat chakra, it's really, really fascinating. I just finished a course called Vocal Core Resonance, and it was basically this vocal Jedi training, learning all about how to manipulate energy, move it through the chakras, slow time down, or like the sensation of time using toning, all of this really wild, cool stuff. But when I was in this private Facebook group for this course, somebody posted a graphic that I now am integrating as part of my men's course that I'm building. And it was a graphic of the sort of like an intersection of the throat and the bones. And you can see the way that it looks, almost like through a slide sort of. And then it was the anatomy of a woman's uterus. And these side by sides of how much the internal workings of the throat and the internal workings of the uterus look alike. And what we also know about the chakras, again, is that the throat chakra and the second chakra are sort of these mirrors of each other. So if you're really locked up sexually, you might have difficulty expressing, and vice versa. And your second center, your sexual center, is also connected to your creativity a lot. And so one of the things I talk about in my men's course is about making sound in bed and how that can help unlock a woman's sexuality, but also how can you as a man make sound appropriately in bed to incite more pleasure in her and invite her to feel secure making sound as well. Because there's definitely a way to make sound that's kind of gross and performative and feels inauthentic, right? And it's not using that extra sense that we're talking about and that heart coherence. But when you're connected to someone, you're deeply connected during lovemaking, and you can almost like co-create this pleasurable orgasmic dance of sound together. It is one of the most heightening and delicious things that personally I have ever experienced. So just like kind of getting that down to a science and coming up with all these fun tips for how to do that has been really, really cool.
That is so interesting. And just as I was talking about earlier, how, you know, this masculine and feminine thing that we've been searching for on the external for so long, like this desire to, you know, create something, because that's what sex is. It's like our creative force. It is, this book talked about how, you know, the orgasm is like bringing you back to your essence, which is that ecstasy feeling. It's like remembering where we came from. We've learned all of this not so ecstasy stuff. And so that's so interesting, because as you find that person who is perfectly whole and complete, and then you partake in this experience that's just so magical together, that's when I truly believe like we are extremely magical and we can create whatever we want. So well, I never even thought about that possibility before. It's crazy how much sex is just totally distorted from when we're 3 watching a movie with our parents, where they're like 2 people kissing on the screen. Like as we talked about in the beginning, like we don't know what we even truly believe is a normal relationship or a normal experience, because we've been taught and told to believe these things through television, through media, all that stuff. I think it's so important that we really tap into the fact that sex is an energy exchange, And when it's not done with the right person or with the right intentions, like it can really pull you and drain your energy without you even realizing it, because you don't even know that that's happening because we were never taught it. This is something that I've really been learning through myself. And it's crazy how like it's just painted in our culture, college, hookup culture, like not a sacred thing. And it really, really, really is. So I think the more we can start teaching that to our young people, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Luckily, growing up, my mother did present sex to me in that way. And I think that's why I am so blessed to have had a little bit of a head start with it, because she really did say that when you have sex with someone, you're exchanging DNA. So a little piece of them is with you and you is with them forever. And, you know, fluid bonding is really, really real. So, I always, she never like shamed or deterred me from sex. In fact, she really encouraged me to explore my sexuality, but to, like you said, understand that it was my power. And did I really want to give some of my power away? And so at this point in my life, I love sex, but I'm very, very discerning about whom I'm going to share that with. And at this point, I know I've crossed the threshold of like, I won't be having sex that isn't super deeply nourishing on a spiritual level. That doesn't mean there isn't room for kink and play and, you know, fun and dirtiness and whatever. I mean, that's all part of healing and growing and learning about each other. But it's done in a respectful container. It's done in a way that both people are being super vulnerable and showing up with not just their sexual organs, but their hearts and their entire emotional bodies.
Yes, so important.
So you say one thing you're really into discussing is relationships. So talk to us about what does an ideal relationship look like to you and your experience with relationships. So yeah, we'll start there and then have more questions based on a podcast I listened to on it.
Thank you. That's a great question, by the way. I was just talking about this with a friend the other day because I'm actually in this really interesting process of writing my book. And what that entails is taking out this trunk full of journals, the diaries that I've been keeping since 1998. So I was 8 years old when I started my first diary. I just turned 30. So that's how much writing I have to transcribe. And I have every single, like, first kiss, first time I had sex, when I launched my business, every time I went through depression or a hard time or made a move or had to give up everything or someone I loved died or whatever it was, it's in these pages. So I'm pretty emotionally raw right now as I go through the stories of my life, and some of it contains a lot of suffering and all of it contains a lot of talk about relationships. And it's been really interesting as I kind of have to relive these stories in a way and honor them and integrate them from my current perspective. But I was transcribing some diaries from only last year at this time. And I had ended a very, we'll call it was a lot of stable ambiguity. You know, when there's like a friend that you're more than friends with, but you're not really together, and there's maybe some like codependent stuff happening there. I mean, that was for me only a year ago. I was in a pretty toxic situation like that where I really liked the person. I loved the person and they loved me, but it was like this push-pull and both of our fears were getting in the way. And there was these distorted funhouse mirrors. And, I talk about walking away from that, and it was super, super painful, but it opened up space for my next partner to come in who, I really thought this person was my twin flame. We went super deep, super fast. We drank ayahuasca together. We went really deep into our personal work. And it was some of the most blissful months of my life at the beginning of that relationship, for sure. And what I was reflecting on as I was talking at the kitchen table with my friend was she said, the first ex, we'll call him, he really didn't value me. I was really there with my heart, and I was like ready to be loved and to love and to take the risk. And it didn't really feel like he valued me fully. And then the next ex, like, so valued me, you guys. Like, he so cherished me in the most beautiful way. I felt like a divine goddess. He understood about my menstrual cycles and how sacred moon blood was and having sex on your moon and all of these things. Like, he was just deeply in touch with understanding about the sacred feminine and what it means to hold a woman's emotions. What I wished was in that relationship was, on top of cherishing me, I really wished that this man cherished himself as much as he cherished me. And so what I'm now moving into attracting, and thanking the universe along the way, every single time, going, oh, thanks for helping me get more clear about what I want to attract, is it's not just somebody who adores me. And it's not just somebody who just only adores themselves. It's this idea of both. And it's like going back to what you said about the balance. When you can love yourself so wholly that you're not willing to give up on what maybe like what your life passion is, what your creativity is. Like, for me, I'm not attracted to a man who is only all about me. Like, I want him to have that edge of like, there's something outside of cherishing me that lights him up. It's why his soul is here. And I want him to be balanced in that. And it's that kind of magnetism of coming together and apart. And what I believe is kind of innately in our DNA, where when the men would have to go off and hunt, and the women would take care and nurture and hold that space. And then they'd come back and they'd get to see each other and they'd make love. And then he'd have to go off again and he'd have to do the things. And like, that coming together and apart and learning to ebb and flow with the rhythms of life, I believe, is really important in any relationship.
Wow. Yes. This keeps happening. I swear to God, every week it's like the conversation that I've been wanting to have. It's amazing. You talked a lot about, you're going through these journals and you're revisiting a lot of the painful experiences that you've gone through. And I think, we all have kind of learned throughout our experiences that you learn a lot more when things are painful and hard. And the more that we can learn how to root ourselves in that gratitude that we usually feel in hindsight while it's happening, the more we will be able to just move with so much more ease and grace. Not saying that it's going to be easy, but it will be easier the more that we are able to feel that gratitude and know that this pain could mean like, oh, I'm never going to find love. Oh, whatever story you want to make up about it. Or it could mean I'm growing. I am becoming more of the person that I want to be. And you talked about, through the relationships, you learned more about, what you do want, what you don't want. And we don't really know until we try. I think that's why relationships are so crucial, to just, try things and don't be afraid of failing, because failing, again, you learn the most when you make mistakes, and it's just more lessons. There's this one affirmation from this book called The Complete Works that Derek and I have been reading. It's an old book that kind of touches on the lessons from the Bible from a lens that I'm not used to, because I was not very religious. So anything about the Bible kind of turned me off because of the all-girls school that I went to in middle school. But this is more of like, it talks about reincarnation. It talks about like the spiritual stuff that I'm becoming more open to. And, we have that person on their way, and some things have to fall away so that channel can open. And the affirmation is, my heart's desire is a perfect idea in the divine mind. incorruptible and indestructible, and now comes to pass under grace in a magical way. And I truly believe that, you know, some doors have to close so that others can open, whether that be, you know, right now for that certain relationship with that version of the person. Who knows what's going to happen in the future, right? But just knowing that something had to fall away so that something so much greater is coming. And obviously, you know, you have to mourn and grieve that loss, but it's really exciting to realize that something so much greater is on the way. And I think that goes for anything that happens. You know, you get fired, it's the universe pushing you in the direction that is now your path, and you're going to learn so much more from whatever's next, and just keep learning with each experience. And it's nice to be able to practice that kind of unattachment, because we want to hold on to that like kind of physicalness, that reality, and hold on to the past, just like we do for so many things. I would love for you to go into this idea of the twin flame, because I've talked to Derek a little bit about it. I'm not sure we've talked much about it at all on this podcast. So if you would kind of explain a little bit about that concept, that would be awesome.
Well, I am certainly not, I wouldn't say I'm like an expert on the twin flame idea. But I'll say in this relationship, what I meant by twin flame is just like this sense of it's like your person. It's like, there's so many theories about what a twin flame is. Some people believe it's another half of you. So, again, that's one perception. Some people believe it is like you are from the same candle, and these two flames have been lit and kind of split, but you are from the same source, and there's that like recognition there. Some people believe we have many twin flames, or that idea is malleable based on what frequency or resonance you're at right now. But the way that this partner and I were clipped together by the universe was just so absolutely divine. I've told this story before, and people are like, that doesn't seem real. That seems like a movie script, because it really was like we were walking. I was walking by with a group of friends on the sidewalk in New York City after leaving an event, which was a Paul Selig event. Paul Selig's a channeler, and it was an Aubrey Marcus Paul Selig event. And I was with a group of friends from my Fit for Service program, and we were walking by this restaurant street corner, and I saw out of the corner of my eye this man sitting there at like a bistro table all by himself, and there was something, he wasn't looking at me, he was like staring deeply into this glass of wine. And I remember this just like feeling came over my whole body, that it was just like mystery or like rapture. And I was distracted by the fact that we couldn't get into that restaurant. They were closing, and so we had to leave, and my whole group of friends was leaving, but I was looking over in this man's direction, and something in my intuition was screaming at me saying, you were meant to connect with that person. You were meant to connect with that person. And I was talking to the voice in my head going, that's insane. This is just a person in New York. We're walking, we're going to dinner. I'm with 8 people. I'm not going to stop and talk to this stranger. And while all that was chattering in my head, he looked up, and we looked in each other's eyes, and it was kind of funny. It was like a game of chicken, because I was like, I'm not looking away. And it was like maybe 10 scary seconds, but it felt like infinity of just staring at each other. And then I walked away. We walked away. We went to a restaurant like 2 doors down, and I was spinning. I was reeling out. I was going, oh my gosh, what was that? I never even feel feelings like that. Like usually people feel feelings like that for me, and I never really feel much. And what was that? I feel so strange. I was all bothered and couldn't focus on dinner. And I really had to bring myself home and be like, hey, Hallie, be here with your friends, enjoy dinner, and trust that if you were meant to meet that person, the universe would bring you together. Trust that. So I let it go. And about 2 hours later, I got home and I was on Instagram and I nearly threw my phone across the floor because I had this DM from a person being like, "Hi, I know this is a little strange. I was at an event, a Paul Selig event earlier in the evening, and then I went to dinner on this street corner in New York City. I drove there just for the day. I'm from Pennsylvania. And I believe we locked eyes on the sidewalk, and I just felt like I had to say something." And first of all, I was like, how did this person find me? This is crazy. And it was crazy. You know, he didn't even live there, and there are just how many millions of people that's in that area. The chances were just wild. And I guess maybe a couple months before, he had heard me on Eric Godsey's podcast. And it was the one, he said it was the one episode of that podcast he'd listened to. And he had actually been following me on Instagram for a few months.
Wow.
And he only recognized me when, you know, we passed each other. And so it was one of those moments where I was like, I don't know what this is. And I had made the agreement, you know, I let it go. I had said, all right, if this is meant to be, make it happen. And it just came together, and it was so magical, and it was really effortless from there. And I believe that's kind of the way moving forward that I want to choose to connect with people. It's like, I don't want to chase people anymore. I don't want people to have to chase me. I want to surrender to the current of the universe, and I will know when it feels right, based on the vibration.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a beautiful story. And it's so funny how literally the universe will, like, when you surrender, the universe makes what's supposed to happen. You don't have to really worry or go out of your way. The more you actually don't think about it, because the more you think about like not having it, you're in that lack of it, which means you believe that you don't have it, which means you don't have it. We talk about manifestation and how, you know, there's all these realities going on around us, and this is one physical reality. And time, we talked about time a little bit. It's being weird right now. It's this construct that we have created to understand this experience. And reality, what I believe, is that everything's happening at the same time. So like, you know, these future possibilities are endless, and we can create everything that we want by understanding that we can create it, and by living as if we already have everything we want, because we do. If everything is all happening, you know, that if we think that we have that, then it's going to open that channel, and you have to feel into those emotions as if you already have it. And that's kind of what you do when you surrender and you don't kind of care anymore. You let go, because once you're in that, you know, wondering how, what, when, what do I do? You know, the universe is like, she's questioning me, you know, she's not fully trusting. So that's such a beautiful story, and totally divinely guided. And no matter if, you know, what kind of flame he is, like that was a person that definitely came into your life for you to learn these things. And now the possibilities are endless. I truly believe that.
Mm-hmm. So that story, Taya said, was a beautiful story, and it didn't have a happy ending. How do you deal with the heartbreak of that situation and other heartbreak? Let's talk about heartbreak in the past. But yeah, that one in particular.
Well,
because you thought that was the one, your person.
Right. I mean, what is a happy ending, and when is the ending, right? The story's still going, and it's how we choose to weave it. What I'm thinking about right now is, yeah, it's been difficult to understand and to process and to question what could I have done differently? Did I do something wrong? But to curtail off what we were just talking about is this idea of creating from the feeling of now. And what I've learned in my medicine work and what I've been shown is that all of our power resides in the experience of now. And what that looks like in practice is how can I become conscious of how I desire to feel in each successive now moment. So like this now, and this now, and this now, because I'm creating and attracting things in every single now. Now, when I think about the past, I'm actually doing it now. So this is what you were talking about too, is everything existing it's all happening at once. It is, because every time you conjure up a memory of the past or a vision of the future, when are you doing it? You're doing it now. You're experiencing it now. So when you are thinking about something from the past that's painful and you're rehearsing your trauma and your suffering, you're creating that for yourself in the now as well. And when you are thinking ahead to the future of a desired outcome, how you want to feel once you hit that milestone, or you make that X amount of money, or you have that lover and they have that look in their eyes of desire for you and you're palpably feeling it as if it's now, you're getting the benefit of it in the now. You see how this works? So my practice I don't even want to call it getting over a breakup, because it's not that. It's looking at it, it's honoring it, it's holding it, it's letting all the feelings to pass through me like a sieve, and allow the somatic experience of the release of tears, of laughter, of sweating. I need to release these emotions. I need to grieve properly this expectation that I had that this person was my person for life. And it's not bad to have expectations. In fact, sometimes expectations can be helpful in producing a desired outcome, right? Because they create momentum behind something. Like if I expect good things to happen to me, my brain's going to be scanning for those good things throughout my day. So it's not necessarily bad to have expectations, but where we get hurt is in the attachment. So to be able to navigate and work through our attachments that get broken, and to go way back to what we were talking about with mantras, one of the mantras that is and was really helping me through this period of breakup is the heart cannot be broken. Only the walls around the heart can be broken. I love this. I love to hold on to this image of my heart is not breaking. My ability to love expansively is growing.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's so wild how literally last night in my class, we're doing this internal practicum where we're coaching each other. And I just talked about, we talk about how powerful it is to keep your heart open when it's breaking. And when through my relationships, I'm going through a breakup right now as well. And it's so much easier to close your heart when it breaks. And the more, it is such a blessing to be able to continue to give my all and love so hard and be open even though these things happen. And I think that's our true power. That's learning to unconditionally capital L love, right? Not expecting anything in return, and just learning to give what I know I can give, and not being attached to this idea of this person. If they're not that person, that's okay. I'm learning how to love them for who they are, and understand that I'm bringing more of that same unconditional love to me when I'm able to express that. And it's so important to be with everything that comes up physically, emotionally, because we tend to distract ourselves. I went through a breakup last year, totally different way I handled it, you know, going out and drinking with my friends, trying to meet other people. And it didn't allow me to fully process what was going on. And when you don't process energy, it gets stuck in your body, and then you have to deal with it later. Usually it's harder to deal with later. And so this time I've really been focusing on, you know, I have all these tools, so it's easy to get frustrated when I'm feeling the lower energy, because I'm like, but I have all these tools. I shouldn't be feeling that. Like, let me raise my vibration by doing something. And that's not what this is about. It's about learning how to be exactly where you are and understanding that there is nothing wrong with where you are ever. Where you are is perfect, whether that be lower, whether that be higher, and just understanding that life is this wave. It's these cycles, and you're not going to be there forever. And the more that you can just be and feel into those feelings in the moment, the quicker they are able to be released. And then you won't have to deal with it later on as much. And it's really hard for me to do this, because the other day I was laying on my couch feeling these feels, and I was like, oh, I want to get up and go to the beach. I live right next to the beach. And then I realized, whoa, that's even a way that I like try to feel better and fix or change what's happening. I think that's something that we try to do a lot is, you know, we've been taught that where we are, something needs to be better. We can improve, you know, and I think it's the trick of understanding how to be and not dwell. And that's an art form, I think. But with each experience, you just learn more and more. And it was very uncomfortable just laying on my couch, telling myself, like, don't go to the beach. But quickly, I like it all dissipated because I was with it. I felt it. And energy is just trying to flow. So the more that you allow that to happen, more you're able to move through life, no matter what happens on the external, with ease and grace, because things are going to happen in the external world all the time. It's about learning to just continuously bring yourself back to center, bring yourself back to your heart, and know that that is where your true home is, and place of love, and nobody can ever take that away from you, no matter what happens.
So we're talking about manifestation. Let's manifest your ideal partner, Hallie Rose. What does that person look like in the now?
Interesting question. Because the first thought that came to my mind is I noticed myself go into a space of, I think I want some space alone. I really like hanging out with myself. So I think maybe inadvertently I'm manifesting that right now, because I'm just so deeply engaged in a lot of creative projects that take up a lot of my time. And so I caught myself just now in a story, which is that I don't have time for partnership because I'm engaging so much in my creativity, and that is so important to me. However, the truth is, I've just not yet found the perfect partner who understands the level of independence and spaciousness that I need in my life to feel like the fullest expression of me. And so, first and foremost, the man that I would attract into my life would be incredibly secure. And he's not going to need a high, let's say like high contact, like talking to me all the time, texting me all the time, because the reality is I like to go into my hole and write my book, and I like to go travel for weeks by myself and go do my podcast. And, you know, even with my previous partner, he was like, oh, maybe I can come on some of your trips to, you know, we can rent a house together, and when you're doing your podcast, and I'll meet you in LA or this or that. And I was like, yeah. And I thought about it, and I was like, wait, why? What something is moving in me, like something's not really sitting right. What is this about? And I had to unpack it for myself. And what I eventually came to and expressed to him, and I was like, hey, babe, actually, I really love being on these trips alone. Like, it's really fun for me to do deep dives with all these exciting thought leaders all over the world. And it takes a lot of energy for me to show up for these conversations and be present. I love visiting my friends in other cities. And I don't have a lot of close friends who are geographically around me because I'm moving all the time. So my time with my friends is like, I get to meet them in a city once or twice a year, and we just turn our phones off and we hang. And so I realized that if he were to come on these trips and maybe I was working a lot, I would be self-conscious if he didn't have that much to do and he thought it was a vacation and he wasn't working. I might be resentful. And I just saw all of these things, and I just communicated them to him. And I was like, actually, I really love these just for me. So, you know, my ideal partner is somebody who understands the level of independence I have. They obviously have a well-integrated feminine and masculine. They can express their feelings, but they're confident. They love what they do. They are conscious. They desire to make the world a better place. They're fired up about what they're doing. They're probably highly creative as well, silly. They like to have fun. And they probably love music and cooking and travel. And yeah.
Beautiful. Let's continue on this subject. So you said they have a well-balanced masculine and feminine. What does that look like? Because the masculine and feminine, for how Taiho would define that, would be different than how I define that and how you define that. So how would you define a well-balanced masculine, feminine in a male and also in a female? Let's start with the male.
Yeah. So this is a lot of what I'm going into teaching in my course. So it's about multi-dimensional emotional mastery, as I call it, as I'm coining it. Really being able to get in touch with our feelings and needs and communicate them. This for me is part of integrating your feminine and understanding your feminine as a male. Like we said, bringing the energy up to the heart and to the throat and kind of feeling and expressing. And that doesn't mean falling apart into a puddle and not being able to get back up, sort of an emotional ball, although all of us need to do that at times, but it's on a regular day-to-day basis. Can you be in tune with your heart? Can you show up with vulnerability? Can you talk about your insecurities? Have you done your shadow work? You know, have you gone into your core woundings? Have you gone into your childhood trauma? Have you journaled? Do you meditate? Are you aware of your thoughts? What percentage of your thoughts are you conscious of? These sorts of things. And for the feminine, and okay, so yeah, and then, you know, I used to date a lot of guys who were maybe overly masculine, just like that entrepreneurial drive and making a ton of money, but like maybe not very in touch with their feelings at all. And kind of, you've got that bro-y sort of archetype where, yeah, they've got like great bodies and big muscles, but, you know, like, I don't, you know, just for me, I've done that. Like, I dated a lot of male models when I was younger, and it's just a certain type, right? It's just not fully integrated in the feminine sense. So again, either extreme is really not what we're looking for in these relationships. And for the feminine, it's kind of what we were talking about before. So a woman who maybe is just airing too much or overcompensating in her masculine. She's really independent, but maybe she doesn't know how to receive, you know, because maybe she's got wounding, or maybe there was something with her father, father wasn't present, or I definitely had portions of my life where I was more in that archetype. It was like, I didn't know how to receive anything from anyone, like even a compliment, and I would get offended all the time. There was just this fire behind everything. So it's like, can I receive? But then when my boundaries are edged, like in the case of me needing more space, I don't fold into it. I don't say, okay, yeah, you can come on the trip, or yeah, you're right. There's probably something wrong with me if I don't want to spend time with him all the time. Oh, this is probably my fault, or maybe the relationship isn't good, or this and that. No, it's not that. It's like, I'm very clear. This is what I need to be the best version of me and the healthiest partner for us. And so that's the integration of both halves there. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
I loved what you said about just now, having that. I think we talk about, water is associated with the women, the compassion, the love, the empathy, and then the male, the divine masculine is more the earth, grounding, alignment, all of that. And when you have one or the other too much, it, one has to suffer usually. And learning to have that ground, have that like stable, sturdy confidence in yourself that this is what you need, and you don't have to feel bad about it. Because I think we talk about in my course how the distorted water is like that neediness, or that like that can even be like need to please, right? That people pleaser. So yeah, learning how to really balance them. And again, I feel like it's kind of, you go back and forth, and then you just start to find that center more and more with more experience. And it's not about, it's likely we're never going to get fully there ever. This is a lifelong journey. There's always going to be stuff to improve. So just having compassion that with each day, and the more awareness that brings the choice, because when you don't have the awareness, you can't make a choice. But having the confidence to make that choice, to get closer and closer to that center every time, and just knowing that this is going to be a lifelong journey, and that's beautiful. There's no there to get to. And I think knowing that is brings so much more peace, because we've been taught, this is where you're going to find that happiness or fulfillment. And because we never feel that we ever get there, no matter what we accomplish, learning that it's about that ride. It's not about the destination, as cliche as it is, brings a lot of peace.
Mm-hmm. And that there, I believe, is what we said is here. That there is now. Mm-hmm. Again and again and again and again, forever. Mm-hmm. Let's bring awareness to the shadow work. You mentioned shadow work. Let's bring awareness. What is that shadow work? It's something I'm still learning myself. Please share what you have on that and how to attend to that. What is it?
Yeah, for me, shadow work, I think there's some misinformation about what shadow work is. And this is just my perception, but a lot of people think of shadow as like the bad parts of ourselves. It's not necessarily that for me. The shadow are the suppressed parts of ourselves. Could be wonderful traits that you have. Could be like your innate creativity or your beauty. But you have wounding there that has contributed to your disallowing of source, or of truth, or of the fullest expression of love through those things in your life. So for me, shadow work is this process of leaning into the sharp bits. So when something is charged, when somebody rubs you the wrong way, when something is painful or scary, or you feel a contraction, or you notice something within your body, instead of just brushing it off, there's this practice of first the recognition and the waking mindfulness to see like, okay, this is interesting. I'm feeling deeply uncomfortable around this, or this interaction, really, this person is triggering me. It's not this person. It's not this person's fault. They are being a mirror, because there's other people that love that person and think they're the greatest thing ever. it's kind of like this idea. I was rereading the book Nonviolent Communication the other day, and he talks about a scenario in which you're meant to meet a friend and they're running late, and the friend texts you, sorry, I'm running late. So maybe you get that text and you're like, oh my gosh, this friend is always running late. They don't value me, blah, 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 blah. Or maybe another person gets that text and goes, oh, phew, I'm running late too. Or like, I actually needed 15 more minutes to do my meditation. Same event or stimulus, totally different response. Wasn't the person, it was you. So to bring awareness to that and start taking responsibility for how you feel, instead of thinking that it's all these external things, or, oh, it's just the environment of my life. And certainly there are factors that contribute to challenge or suffering, but it doesn't stop there. That's where the work begins. And so to begin to lean into that, to kind of shine the light, so to speak, on these deeper parts of our psyches that maybe went a little bit or left unconscious for the earlier part of our lives up until this point. So that's what shadow work is for me.
Yeah, we've talked about the idea of triggers a lot on this podcast, and another thing that we can rewrite the narrative of what it is, right? People can look at triggers as negative and annoying and all this, or you can look at it as, oh, wow, this is an opportunity for me to learn more about myself. And I think it's shifting that lens from that kind of judgmental identifying with being to like this curious and compassionate and observing being, taking the back seat. Or I've been using this analogy of like, rather than living the movie that I'm watching, that is my life, I'm like realizing I'm in the audience and I can just watch the dramatic experiences happening and not identify with them and make them mean so much more and cause so much more suffering for myself than I need to. And you can just really start to find more and more of that center, because you know that, again, nothing on the external world has to affect you in that emotional way if you don't let it. And the more and more you learn, the more I think there's this idea that I read from this book about light is information and darkness is lack of information. And this is a universe of duality. We cannot have light without the equal dark. And I believe that we all have this equal light and dark within us. And this kind of shadow is that dark part that, as you said, not necessarily negative and positive is something that we've made up. The suppression, as you said, it's like that lack. And just bringing light, as you quote, I was like going to talk about this, and then you said bringing light to that darkness, bringing light to those places that you are completely unconscious of, because we live in this world as, when we're conscious, that's what's real. And there's so much that goes on in our unconscious brain that plays out in our conscious lives, and we have no idea that unconscious way of being or thinking is controlling us a lot of the time. So the more we can bring awareness to that parts of the unconscious parts of us, I think the more we will unearth those shadows and realize that we don't have to work against them. They're not working against us. It's just learning, again, how to integrate everything together so that they're working in harmony.
Yeah, and that book you were talking about, it sounds like maybe it was Bringers of the Dawn. I'm not sure.
Yes,
yeah, it was. Yeah. I'm also reading that at the moment, or rereading it, and it's going really nicely in tandem with my re-listening to the Law of Attraction stuff and the teachings of Abraham and Esther and Jerry Hicks, who I just continually try to entrain myself, like reprogram my brain with that material all the time. It has been one of the most helpful tools for me in generally getting out of depression and raising my vibration, just getting up every morning and listening to that. And they said something yesterday when I was listening, which I loved. And it goes along with this idea of the light. And they said, you don't walk into a room and turn on the darkness switch and this inky black stuff, cloudy stuff comes in. There's only the light. The light is source, and the light is you. And anything else is just the resistance or the lack of light, the lack of you, the resistance to what you are. So for me, that's what shadow work is really about. It's not like I have to fix these parts of me, I have to change them. We're shining the light and we're saying to all these little broken pieces, I love you anyway, and come on in and be whole.
Yes. So much yes.
One thing I want to, I didn't get to any of my questions at all, but that's okay, because you just keep on taking me down different threads.
I'll just have to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about communication, and I want to talk about that. We can communicate in our being, and that's a huge way we can communicate by our being, but we also have to communicate with words. How do you advise communication in relationships of all sorts?
So one of the mistakes that can often be made in communication is we make a lot of diagnoses of what are going on in other people's behaviors. And sometimes we'll try to describe our feelings. We'll say, I feel this way because you. Never. So it's really about, first of all, getting real with yourself. Like, what are you really feeling? And making sure that you're actually using a feeling word. So I am feeling discouraged. I'm feeling embarrassed. I'm feeling lonely. And then once you've identified the feeling, identify which need of yours is not being met. So I'm feeling lonely because I have a need for connection that's not being met. And then the third step is to tell the person how they might make life more wonderful for you, or more lovely, or help you have that need met. Because there's this foundational thing, I believe, in every human being, that is this desire to contribute to life. This is from the work of Marshall Rosenberg and nonviolent communication. We all desire to make life more wonderful for each other and contribute to something and feel connected to that. So when we're expressing our needs, Marshall talks about this idea of expressing what we would like with this Santa Claus attitude versus like a kick me attitude. So when you express something in a way that gives somebody else the gift of being able to give to you, that is one thing, versus, you're coming from this victim place and the person feels like they might have to do it for you, or they're going to feel bad if they don't, or you're going to get upset. And when people do things, or when people make changes in their behavior based off of, guilt or shame or fear or some undesirable outcome, those sorts of things always tend to backfire, and they really, in the long run, prevent us from having sort of deep, connected, and vulnerable relationships. So it's about taking rapturous responsibility for how you're feeling in the moment without blaming another. And so, like, you made me feel again. And also being cognizant at the same time not to centralize yourself, like really try and deeply understand what the other person is expressing. And maybe they don't have the skills or the tool set that you do. So this is where you have to develop that extra sense, dropping into your heart space, watching from that space, breathing, noticing your body, noticing if they say something that makes you want to contract, noticing if you want to jump in and cut them off, holding that within yourself. Having these two tracks, this is again the multidimensional emotional mastery, where I can be experiencing the hurt of what you just said to me that made me feel a certain way, and at the same time I'm having deep empathy for your human experience and what you're expressing to me? And can I develop this container that can just hold these two tracks going at the same time? I mean, it's difficult work, but it can be done. So that's just the edge. But if you want to dive deeper, come find me.
Yeah, I loved what you were saying about, you know, they might not have all the tools that you have. They might not have been raised the same that you were. And I think it's so important that we realize that, you know, we are all one. We are all the universe experiencing itself from different lenses. And my lens is different than yours. And so what this person is doing feels right to them. We are only always ever doing what feels right and the best that we can with the tools that we have. And back to like keeping your heart open when it would be really easy not to. It would be really easy to blame. It would be really easy to, you know, be in that fear energy. It's back to the vibrations, the frequency that you're holding, right? We can choose to acknowledge how it may be making us feel and realize that how we're feeling is in our control, because we can look at them as, you know, different than us, disagreeing with us, blah, 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 not doing the right thing. We love being right. But if it was easy to like face your triggers and take emotional responsibility for everything, like everybody would be doing it. So it's not easy, but it's so powerful when you can continuously choose to be in that vibration of love, no matter how anybody acts towards you or does. And the more that it's building a muscle, really, like just like you work out in the gym, you can build this muscle of being able to be so sure of that infinite supply of love within yourself that you never have to allow anybody externally to pull you out of that if you don't want to. Again, not easy. It's a lifelong journey of just strengthening that muscle more and more, but we all have this capability.
So Taiha and I, we connected going for a win. And what that means to me is delighting in the process rather than being destination orientated. What does winning mean to you? And let's celebrate some of your wins. What are some of your most proud accomplishments?
Oh, wow. My most proud accomplishments. I feel like it's changing in every single moment, in every single year. I mean, I could rattle you off a list of the impressive accolades or things I've done or things I've published or crazy jobs I've had. But actually what I'm most proud of is my commitment to becoming my best self. Showing up, holding my heart in really painful times with grace, and always doing my best to find space for people I love in the now when they come to me with suffering, even in the middle of, I have a to-do list of 100 things that I'm on my way to do. And yet there's a person right in front of me that needs help. And what is really important in that moment. And so I'm proud of the way that I show up for people that I love in my life more than anything.
Beautiful. Except when you don't. And that's when resistance arises. That's that negative force that keeps us from fulfilling our dreams and fulfilling you from doing what you just said. How do you overcome resistance, Hallie?
Well, first, a lot of compassion and recognizing that resistance is coming from some sort of fear inside of me. And also recognizing that I don't have to move through everything right away, right? Like that's an illusion. I don't have to be over it. I can be in resistance for a while. Maybe resistance means that I haven't rested in a while, or maybe resistance means this isn't the right thing, or, you know, there's a lot going on there. At the same time, we can enable ourselves to not get further in our goals. So there's a delicate balance with our mindset and being honest about what's going on. We each need to allow for the cycles. The earth moves in cycles, the yin and yang, expansion, contraction. We already talked about this. To identify which part of your cycle you're in and just be really honest about where the resistance is coming from and what it's trying to teach you. Because I don't think resistance is innately a bad thing. It's just another teacher. And how you deal with it is what's important. The grace with which you, again, welcome it in, or as the Buddha would do, he would welcome Mara to tea. You know, he would invite chaos in and say, come sit with me. Come sit with me. All of this pain, all of this suffering. Yes, come in. But you have tea with it. You allow it. And then you say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
You don't push or grasp or attach or make meaning out of something that isn't there. You allow it as part of the full experience of life.
Absolutely. I'm feeling a feeling of stuckness right now. Can you describe to me the last time you felt stuck and how you unstuck yourself?
Yes, I'm actually feeling a little bit stuck in some parts of my life right now. But I'm curious for you, before I answer this, where exactly are you feeling the stuckness?
I feel I'm stuck repeating the same cycle.
Okay. Do you want to talk more to what the cycle is? Are you feeling open to sharing that?
I'm still learning how to explain that. Like, I'm still processing that myself with my journaling. So I am open to it, but you may have to prod that out.
Are you talking about career / moving?
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
So first of all, you've obviously noticed a pattern. How did that noticing occur? Was it through your journaling?
And being silent and just sitting with myself, taking a third person perspective on me, whatever that is, on this perceiver. I believe I'm a perceiver of the experience that is Derek. I don't believe I am Derek.
So when you became the one who was witnessing Derek, who identified that there was a pattern that you were stuck in, what was the pattern that this witnessing being saw?
The pattern is I'm preparing myself for a leap, and then right when that opportunity for a leap comes, there's like treasures that keep me where I am, whether that be opportunity financially, whether that be a relationship, but there's treasures that keep me on the current journey I'm on when I'm preparing to jump onto another journey. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah. And what's interesting is that you use the word treasures that keep me. So these are like two kind of opposing ideas in my mind, because you're saying this beautiful thing is keeping me stuck right where I am. Like, just think about that statement. So there's a perception here that maybe you should be taking this leap, and I'm not going to tell you whether you should or should not. Maybe you are definitely stuck in a pattern of a scary thing comes up and you take the more secure route. But who is to say whether or not that is necessarily a bad thing? Only you. It's the perception that you place on it. So what's interesting is you've clearly identified this as something that seems problematic to you. And that's where the gold is in your investigation next, would be like, why do I feel that way? So maybe you feel you should be taking these risks because perhaps it's your soul knows this is really your next calling and you're just having resistance to it. Or maybe you feel like you should be taking these next risks because society tells men that they should take big risks. those are two very different things. So it's hard for me to tell you, unless you do a little bit more digging, where these beliefs, where these shadows are actually coming from. But these are the sort of questions that you want to be asking.
And I'm in the process. And that's why I was curious to hear of your example, because I think there's a lot of learning when we hear other people's stories.
Yeah. So right now I'm feeling stuck in, I guess, I'm such a creator, and I love creating, and I'm in this dance consistently of creating structure and then feeling that's too much structure. I need more freedom. And then having too much freedom being like, I need more structure. So that's kind of the dance I'm in right now. Is I love my life of travel and being able to go wherever I want. But then there's this part of my heart that desires to have a home and a solid community in one place. And I love being able to wake up whatever time of day I want and write my book and have my team running my podcast. But at the same time, I realize that my brain definitely thrives when I have a little bit more structure. So how can I create that for myself? And so firstly, it's just been about identifying what my patterns are, and then really tuning in with my intuition and asking myself what I need. So I've hired a coach. Even coaches need to hire coaches because we have so much to learn. And what I'm working on learning is I feel very comfortable in my feminine. I feel like I can teach a lot about emotions and relationships and creativity and intuition and sexuality. And what I need to learn right now is some more of the masculine components of like how to market myself in a way that I'm comfortable with. Cause I always feel like, oh, I'm so tired of people marketing themselves. And like, I can see you're marketing yourself on Instagram, and like, where is the integrity? And that's never really been my thing. I've always just wanted people to find me organically. And so I had a story around like, I'm never going to market myself like that. I just trust the universe and, whatever. And that's partly true, but I also think there is an invitation for me to grow in those areas. So anytime we have strong beliefs or resistance to things, again, it's an invitation to lean into it and to go there, because on the other side of that is where you're going to just feel so much more expansion. And yeah, so seeking guidance, seeking help, humbling yourself. The ego hates that. It's like, no, I can figure this out. No, I mean, ask people that you think have it down and pay for it. Like that's the other thing is like, especially when you're very autodidactic and you read a lot and you audiobooks and podcasts, you're like, no, and internet, I can just Google this. No, pay people to help you. You don't need all the electronic things all the time, automation and robots. What we need is connection and to be heard and to be empathized with. And the best investment you can make is in yourself. And we need more spaces to be heard. And if you can simultaneously support someone whose work you believe in and who you think is an astonishing human being doing incredible things in the world, think about the symbiosis of that. So that's my advice. And right now I work with like 3 to 4 coaches at all different times. I have like my spiritual coach, my business coach, someone who talks to me about like channeling and all of these different things. So highly recommend, identifying where you need help and humbling yourself to get it.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. I'm so grateful to have you on this for this conversation. I didn't know like you're one of our few guests that I have not met. And but I knew you knew how to dance, and we've been dancing.
Perfect.
So we close with a couple questions. There's going to be 3 of them. So let's just get into those now.
All right.
Yeah, hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So this first one here is, what has been your greatest life lesson you've learned on the path thus far that you'd like to share with us in our audience?
My greatest life lesson is that I know nothing and everything at once, and to try and embody both of those at the same time, to take a beginner's mind, to be always open and willing to being wrong and to learning more, and at the same time to boldly trust in yourself and your intuition.
I feel that.
Beautiful.
So hard. Love it. All right, I got one for you. In 3 words, how would you describe the experience that you are having on this earth? Or a phrase?
Awe-inspiring, juicy, and perfect.
Love that. Thank you very much.
So I am a magician, as we all are, and I'm going to use my magic skills, and I'm going to transport us into the future. I'm going to be in the now in the future at at an 85-year-old Hallie Rose. What does that 85-year-old Hallie Rose, what does your life look like? And what is the legacy you left behind?
Oh man, my 85-year-old self, she's going to be dancing around the kitchen, which I do all the time. You know what? She's probably going to be doing a lot of the things that I already do, hopefully, which is waking up every day and creating, waking up every day and loving on the people that I love, waking up and getting out in nature, connecting to what is alive on the earth, what is alive in other people. Hopefully I'll have many more books published at that point. I'd love a little writing desk in the middle of the woods somewhere. Hopefully I have lots of grandkids and loved ones in a garden where I grow most of my own food, and a lot of peace, a lot of time for meditation, and for being available for people who need help in their journey.
Beautiful. And I just want you to picture that 85-year-old dancing with her grandchildren in the woods, with her garden. I want you to close your eyes and just picture her seeing the life she lives, because I can't leave you in the future. I'm going to bring you back to the now. And in the now, that 85-year-old Hallie brings you a message. What does she tell you?
She says, "You're doing great, kiddo." I feel like I'm on the right track. So that's
Beautiful.
Good. It's encouraging.
Amazing. So thank you so much. We'll definitely have to have you on. Like, I asked 2 questions on my list.
That's the way it's supposed to go. Let it flow.
So where can they find you? There's so many places. So I'm just going to let you take that over.
Yeah. So I'm most active on Instagram. And if you want to follow my personal account, it's at Hallie, HALLIE _Rosebud. I'm also very active on my podcast Instagram, which is at Thought Room Podcast. My podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, anywhere you can find podcasts. You can also stream it at thoughtroompodcast.com. And for anybody who is interested in signing up for my men's course that's coming up, I'm hoping to select a small group of like 12 men to do a really deep dive with, and do like an 8 or 12 week course. So anyone interested in getting on the wait list for that can sign up at www.hallierose.com/men. And you can also sign up for my newsletter. I write these like amazing newsletters. Well, I think they're amazing. And I share all of these. Like, I have this really weird thing where I love to make playlists. Like, I curate playlists for every type of scenario. Like, I have sacred sex playlists, I have cooking playlists, I have multiple yoga playlists, meditation playlists. So people can follow me personally on Spotify, Hallie Rose. And you can also get all of those playlists through signing up for my newsletter just by going to thoughtRoomPodcast.com.
Beautiful.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this conversation, Hallie. I really appreciated it. Let's bring it in.
Let's bring it in to the winner circle. It's a choice, and we could all step up and be a winner. So
thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciated it. And we have to have you back on soon.
Would love that. Thank you.
Thank you.